Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today we have some truly ridiculous movie news to discuss. Some of it is ridiculously good, some of it is ridiculously bad, and some of it is just plain old ridiculous across the board. And I'm going to leave you to try and guess which is which. Now, I think the good and bad, that's the one that's going to trip a lot of you up. But the one that's ridiculous across the board is obviously our first story, and that has to do with the movie that's actually called Ridiculous. It owns up to it, and that's Adam Sandler's The Ridiculous Six. Now, this made headlines late last night out of CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, which is going on right now, and it was such an amazing headline that many of you actually tweeted it to me, and that was Netflix, making the keynote speech at the convention, backing up basically. They took the opportunity, by the way, to work it into the conversation apparently. That they were right to invest in Adam Sandler. So what did they reveal? Interestingly enough, Netflix only will reveal viewership numbers when it suits them. That's the benefit of being a company that doesn't have to disclose their, ratings to the public, because it's all done on a streaming service. It's a little bit like nobody really knows how movies do on streaming in general at all, because there's no service that tracks it. It's not made public information. Occasionally, again, somebody will say, well, my movie made X number of dollars streaming, but really it's just a black hole where nobody knows if anyone succeeded or not. But anyway, Netflix said, well, we have some numbers to back up Ridiculous Six. And they probably feel it's ridiculous they have to defend their Adam Sandler deal, but a lot of people feel that Adam Sandler's movies are ridiculous these days. I find it ridiculous that people are so against Adam Sandler. Like, what did he ever do to you guys? I mean, he's made some bad movies, sure, but I think some of them aren't that bad. And I think, for instance, I thought Pixels was fun, as I said in my review, and they certainly aren't that far afield of what he was doing when everybody liked him. So it is a little bit of a ridiculous situation where people just, decided to go on a manhunt or a monster hunt for Adam Sandler and his work. But he seems to have found a good home at Netflix, and they're not willing to give up on him. So what did they reveal? Well, The Ridiculous Six, and they were a little misleading here, but The Ridiculous Six had more views in its first 30 days than any movie on the service. Now, that does not mean that it has more views in 30 days than any movie on the service in total. This is just comparative first of 30 days for any movie. Now, they're only getting into the business of debuting a movie at a specific time that's like a must-watch movie, so I don't think that's probably that hard a record to break, quite frankly. I think they're not really at the point, I'd be interested to know, I think Pee-wee, for instance, would probably break this record immediately, Pee-wee's Big Holiday, which is coming up, and also Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2, I think. Wow, this is a record that probably won't last long, because for the most part, movies, Netflix actually isn't really in the new content business anymore. Like when a movie debuts for streaming, it's like on iTunes, it's on cable, cable on demand. Netflix has really lost out on that corner of the business, which is why they've started their own original programming in the first place. So anyway, I think that it's not a huge headline, but at least this is performing very well for the company, and it makes Adam Sandler look good. Although again, people are so against Adam Sandler these days that I think they just still don't care, even if this headline exists. But anyway, I thought that was a very interesting story to kick things off with. And I think overall, Netflix's original content experiment is going very, very well, and I think they actually are the best positioned of any of the streaming services creating their own content. Now, the next story is Emma Stone is being considered, she's in talks to do an origin story for Cruella De Vil for Disney. It's written by one of the screenwriters on 50 Shades of Grey, and obviously they're hoping to have her follow in the footsteps of Angelina Jolie's Maleficent and Cate Blanchett's evil stepmother. Now, is this the ridiculously good story or the ridiculously bad story? Well, you might disagree with me, but I'm going with ridiculously bad, because I think Emma Stone is in a very precarious position with her career right now. I think she did a lot of damage to it, becoming more enamored with, just like Anne Hathaway, being the prettiest girl in the room rather than the funniest, most personable girl in the room. Anne Hathaway had the exact same problem, still hasn't recovered, and I fear that Emma Stone also has the same problem. I mean, she looked great in the Spider-Man movies, but she didn't look like Gwen Stacy. She had the blonde hair and everything, but there was just a self-awareness that developed with Emma Stone when she took on the Spider-Man role that I haven't seen it go away, basically, is my biggest concern with her as an actress. Now, also, I think that while she's very, very, very funny, I don't think she has quite the dramatic flair that Angelina Jolie and Cate Blanchett do. I think actually both of them would make a better Cruella De Vil than Emma Stone. But I think she has the button nose that Cruella so famously or infamously has as an animated character. But I think that Emma Stone's going to make it seem very high schooly, very The Descendants, right? I mean, that's very popular, of course, but that's because it's supposed to be that. I think people I don't think anybody's really eager for a Cruella De Vil origin story that puts her at such a young age. I think they want her to be closer to the character. Now, of course, Glenn Close brought this character to life on the big screen live action, a long time ago at this point. But I think perhaps Disney doesn't want to compete with that, and maybe that's one of the reasons they want to go with such a much younger version of the character. But I think it's a mistake to even go that route at all, and then I feel that they're doubling down on the mistake with Emma Stone in the role. I do question whether or not she can even bring anybody into the theater right now. She's a little bit almost like Kristen Wiig too, who Kristen Wiig didn't become self-aware, but I think Kristen Wiig became really interested in being this alternative talent rather than a mainstream talent, and her box office has suffered as well, and that's why Melissa McCarthy's been able to surpass her. We'll see. Kate McKinnon, I think, is actually the new Emma Stone right now, or has the potential to be. So we'll see what happens, but I think that Emma Stone is poorly cast just in general, and I also think, I don't know if she has the talent to pull it off, and I think she has a lot to do to make up for the damage she's already caused to her career. But I'm curious, what do you think? I just don't want this to seem like a high school production of someone deciding to do Cruella De Vil rather than a legitimate Cruella De Vil movie. But let's see the trailer, let's see what they have in mind, but it seems very bad to me on paper. All right, so that's the ridiculously bad story of the day. That means that this Furious 8 story is the ridiculously good story of the day. Now, some of you might disagree with me on that, but bear with me. Allow me to explain. So it's become, people have become aware of the fact, because they have to apply with the governments of the United States and Cuba, that Universal wants to shoot part of Furious 8 in Cuba. So New York City, they've already talked about having it take place in New York City, but then they also want to go to Cuba. Now, of course, New York, just like Los Angeles, has its go-to vacation destinations like Hawaii and Mexico. Here in New York, because it's closer, everybody goes to Florida. Florida's a big destination. Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, all those islands there. And now, of course, Cuba, now the travel embargo has finally been lifted. And there are, of course, a lot of Cuban Americans in, this country. So some of them are running for president. But anyway, I think it's a really, really smart idea for Vin Diesel to tap into this very strong allegiance so many people have to Cuba. It has a very strong recognition factor. I guess you could say Cuba has a good, strong fan base. And I think that it actually is perfectly in line with the people who like the Fast and Furious movies. So I think that it just shows that Vin Diesel and his team, maybe not in other franchises or other choices that he makes for himself, like The Last Witch Hunter, but when it comes to the Fast and Furious franchise, he is a brilliant businessman. And this is such an incredibly smart move, and I think will help the movie so much that it's just really a great idea. And I think it adds even more nos to the engine, in addition to everything else they're trying to do with the franchise. So very, very smart. They still have to come up with a replacement for Paul Walker. That's going to be crucial, and it better not be one of his brothers. I mean, with all due respect to them, I'm glad they helped him complete his final film, but I would hate that Paul Walker's death would become a career opportunity for one of his siblings who isn't even an actual actor. All right, so anyway, those are the three stories of the day. Now, for the viewer question, I got this from such a great name, Sarah Sunshine. I was like, that's a great name. How can I not answer Sarah's question? And I've seen a couple of you ask similar questions to this, so I thought it would be a good idea to address it with this awesome name. So Sarah says, "Hey Grace, I have a question. When is the box office for a movie officially closed?" And we've been discussing box office a lot lately because, it's the end of the year. We're looking at all the box office winners. So it's on a lot of people's minds in particular. So Sarah says, is it after it's in theaters, including secondary ones like, she said Elvis, or DVD sales. I think she means maybe Netflix, typo, autocorrect. But she says, "I love it if you could clarify," smiley face. Well, Sarah, great question. A movie's theatrical release numbers only count for when it's actually playing in a theater. Now, afterwards, it's secondary is a good guess for what it would be called, but it's actually called the ancillary market. That's the official term. And that's when it plays on cable, streaming, rental anywhere it's rented, hotels, on an airplane, anywhere that it's going to play after its theatrical run. That's the ancillary market. And there can be quite a bit of money made there. So much money that it can get a sequel greenlit, because they're like, well, it did make a lot of money in the theaters, but clearly an audience has found it in its ancillary shelf life. So if we make a sequel, it has all these new fans that maybe will go see it in theaters. That, for instance, happened with the first Austin Powers. The first one was just a moderate to mediocre success in theaters, but did so well online and streaming and rentals that when The Spy Who Shagged Me debuted, it was a monster hit. But as for the numbers that we are always looking at and comparing them to, it's only what the movie does while it plays in the theater. Now, the dollar theater and everything like that, I believe, counts, but it has to be playing in theaters. And so that's why if a movie can last for a very long time, it can really pull in that money. Somebody actually was talking about Avatar and how it was able to make so much money, and they said that Avatar came at such a perfect point that it was really when IMAX was starting to spread across the globe. So IMAX actually stepped in and used Avatar as a carrot to get people to build IMAX theaters. So it played in them for quite a long time. So that's one of the reasons it made so much money overseas. I think it made like $2 billion overseas alone. And that's largely due to just being in the right place at the right time. So someone's gonna have to come up with a new level of technology, and some movie will have to capitalize on that. But Sarah, I hope that clarifies. Thank you so much for your question. Thank you everybody for tuning in today. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories. Which one you would brand the best, the good ridiculous, bad ridiculous, and just ridiculous across the board. Some of you might pick Furious, the Fast and Furious for that one. And then of course, your thoughts on the viewer question as well. Let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow, Friday, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.